of the Tractate Nazir, and today is almost the last daf. Going to study daf page 65. 1974 in China. It was amazing discovery. It was excavation. They discovered a city underground, believed to be the time of the first emperor, who traumatized over series of people who tried to assassinate him, and he built a city underground. It is believed that at least part of that city was built on the people, dead people, etc. Big to do, 1974 in China. With that in mind, we're going to discuss all this subject of finding a corpse. The question is, how do you know who and what? We analyze the way that people are buried with the assumption how we, meaning the Jewish people, versus the idolaters and others who bury their dead. For sure, there is a wonderful book written by former Yeshiva University director Rabbi Lam, as well as Rabbi College wrote also a wonderful book in regards to the end of life and afterlife. But here in Israel, in Hebrew, there is a book by Rabbi Tukochinsky. The late Rabbi Tukochinsky wrote the Gesher Chaim, the Bridge of Life, and is a big chapter in regards to Pinui Kvarim, when and where and how do we allow to open a grave and relocate the deceased. So we'll start with the concept of Raglaim Ladavar, when we have some foundation to make those rulings. In general, we do not open graves, we do not move a dead body. It's only with exceptions such as moving from outside of Israel to Israel, or if it was an issue of heavy anti-Jewish sentiment, swastika, etc., or other exceptional circumstances. So here the Mishnah, page 64b, 4 lines from the bottom of the page, Hamotze met bat chila, a fellow who dig in the ground and he found a corpse. He wasn't aware that it was a location of a dead body. Now, in one hand, mushkav kedarko, meaning he see that this corpse was lying in a usual manner of Jewish burial. So, for sure, we have our own rules, which is, the Yerushalmi said, at the end of the book called Chokhmat Adam, there is a special minhagim of the Chevra Kadisha, of the Sacred Society, the way that they buried our loved one. But the idea is that you see the legs and the hands folded on his heart. That's the way it used to have the minhag of bury our people. We assume that as a result he is part of our people, and the idea is, in order to purify that location, the Meiri explained, he wants to move. So if it's a idolater, it's not an issue, because we're allowed to relocate idolater, versus if it's a fellow Jew. The Gemarrah in Sanhedrin, page 47, tells us that only if it was conditional that the burial is temporarily, then we're allowed to do it. And later the Mishnah explains the difference between permanent versus temporary burial site. So the Mishnah said, Notlo, he takes the dead body, ve'et tefusato, and its surrounding, which is the dust around it. So some said it's because of kvod hamet, honor the deceased, because the Ritva explained it may be some leftover blood or some part of the body. The Rambam in Ilchot Tumat Met, chapter 9, said it's in order to purify the location. We want to do that. That's based on Gemara and Bava Batra, page 101. So here, next page, bless you. Next page, the Gemara explain how much surrounding, how much dust one, we need to take that it's collected around the deceased. Shnayim, if it was two corpses, notlan ve'et tefusatan. So since we found only one or two dead body, and we are not sure if it was a permanent burial or temporary burial, we assume that it was not a permanent cemetery since we're not aware of that, and we assume that it's only for just short period of time. So therefore, the Rosh explained, the owner of that field did not permit them to bury, and we do not have the manner of kinyan, meaning acquisition of that location, and therefore we allow to go ahead and remove them and then surrounding earth. Notlan ve'et tefusatan. Matzah shlosha. If it was three corpses, אם יש בין זה לזה בארבע אמות ועד 8, if between the first to the third burial we have 4 to 8 cubits in a standard design, and in some of your Gemarahs you see the chart. In those days it was me'arat kvura, it was a cave, it was kuchim, a special location. You see the cave of Machpelah, it's not a good example, but you see the idea that you see a large burial site and different people are buried. At that time it was 4 to 8 cubits, and it was kuchim, it was a special section in each part that they buried the loved one. So they said if it's less, if it's from 4 to 8 cubits, which is the standard design, so they said, Arei zo shchunat kvarot. We assume that this is a graveyard, like a cemetery, and therefore we have the concern that Tosfot said that the entire place is contaminated, carries a ritual impurity, and therefore the Meiri said you need to check the entire location to see that it's pure, as we explain later. So since we have our experience that we assume that it was an ancient cemetery, and therefore the deceased kanu et mekomam, they acquire their burial site, therefore we assume that that's the location for them as a permanent location. In those years it was me'arot kvura, it was a grave yard, that it was basically two caves built one in the front of the other, and it was 6 by 6 cubits distance in between them. In Gemarrah you see charts that explain it. Page 65. Bodek hemenu, 65. Bodek hemenu ulehalan. So we need to examine from outside, the outer part, 20 amma, 20 cubits, in order to clarify if there are other burial sites in that me'arat kvura. Now we should know, if you pay attention at the burial, we always make sure that we put the heads and in the right location versus the leg. And the way that they did in those years, they put the deceased, the head outer and the legs inner, and therefore we have this concern based on Gemarrah Bava Batra 102, how exactly we treated that place. But in short, matzah echad besof 20 amma. If one finds another corpse at the end of 20 cubits, so we assume that it's also a permanent burial. Bodek himenu ulhalan 20 amma. So he need to examine from that spot outward 20 cubits. Maybe there are other burials in that cave, שרגליים לדבר, meaning we assume that there is a basic for anticipating this matter, that it's other grave, and he needs to go further, another 20 cubits to check it. שאילו תחילה מצאו, that if he found a single corpse by itself at first, נוטלו ואת תפוסתו, he could have removed that grave, that dead body, with the surrounding, with the dust that are far around him, and we are not concerned that it's part of a permanent cemetery. So now we derive several halachot from this Mishnah. Amar Rav Yehuda, what we learn in the Mishnah, matzah, that someone found a corpse, a dead body, a single dead body. It means prat lematzui, that exclude the corpse that already has been found. Why? The only idea of relocate the grave, it's if it's a temporary. But if it's a permanent, so Tosfot explains that that's not allowed. Again, that's the famous Gemarrah in Baba Batra, page 101. So met prat leharug. But here we not included, the exclusion is someone who is killed person, even if there is a 3 corpses found, if there are signs that the people were killed, that area is not assumed to be a graveyard, as they may have even been buried where they are found killed. I talked the other day with a veteran of war. So he talked about when the soldiers are out of the country, sometimes by force of circumstance they bury them over there, they put some sign if they have a chance to return to that location, especially if they are on mission, so they come back to collect those corpses. So it's all manner of temporary. So we treat that deceased the same as a person who's missing part of his body. Mushkav prat le yoshev. So if you see a person that it's lying, excluded a sitting person, as Jews are not generally buried in a seated position, כדרכו פרט לשנמצא ראשו מונח בין ירחותיו. So in that usual manner excludes one whose head was placed between the thigh. Again, that's not the way we, the Jewish people, buried our loved ones. So in those two circumstances, you're allowed to relocate the deceased without the surrounding, and you cannot combine saying that these two corpses are considering as a graveyard. Now, we are now speaking about missing part of body. Tani ula bar chanina. Met shechaser, we have a dead body, a corpse, that is lacking a part of his body indispensable to life. Ein lo tfusa velo shchunat kvarot. So he has no halachot that you have to take the dirt, the surrounding earth. You don't need to remove the earth around the core, and nor the graveyard. We don't have to join with two other corpses to establish a site that we call it a manner of cemetery or permanent cemetery. V'chol hanei, all these, for example, the deceased that was found in a position of head placed between the thigh, mai ta'ama lo, amrinan dilma oved kochavim. We assume that maybe he is an idolater because we usually do not bury that way. That's the Rosh and Tosfot said. Matzah shnayim, if it was two corpses, one the side of the others, and those deceased, ראשו של זה בצד מרגלותיו של זה, which means that the head of this one by the feet of that one, וראשו של זה בצד מרגלותיו של זה, and the head of that one by the feet of this one, אין להם תפוסה ולא שכונת קברות. They don't have the surrounding grave, and they don't have the halachot of a graveyard. So therefore, even it was a 3, you're allowed to relocate them, because they are buried the same as idolater. And the Rosh explains, since they buried that, so we assume that they are part of them. מצא שלושה, האחד ידוע ושניים תחילה. The first is known in the 3, and the 2 you have in the other 2, which we're not aware that it was another 2 graves, or there's a few nuschaot, but we go by the שניים, or some said אחד, anyway, it depends on the Rosh. תחילה ושניים ידועים, יש להם תפוסה. Some said אין להם תפוסה. ואין להם שכונת קברות. So some said not the halacha of graveyard, and the surrounding earth, you don't. So you allow the Rosh said in short, you allow to relocate them. So, but that's the Rashbam said is that's halacha Moshe P that you need to go by the 20 cubits around them to make sure that is nothing there. מעשר ברבי ישבב שבדק ומצא שניים ידועים. So this Rabbi Yeshevav examined and found 2 known corpses, and one corpse discovered ואחד תחילה. הוא ביקש לעשותן שכונת קברות, that you cannot relocate that graves. אמר לו רבי עקיבא כל שיגעת לריק יגעת. All this assumption that you want to make it as a cemetery, a graveyard, is in vain. לא אמרו שכונת קברות, אלא לשלושה ידועים או לשלושה תחילה. Only the term of cemetery is either you have a 3 that is totally known corpses buried in one spot, or 3 corpses found for the first time. So if some known or others were discovered for the first time, you cannot combine them. Mishnah said, Notlan ve'et tfusatan. He removes them and then surrounding earth. Hey chedami, give me an example. Tfusa, how you have the surrounding with the corpse. Amar Rav Yehuda amar kra unsa'atani mimitzrayim. Yosef was asked as a viceroy king of Egypt by his father Yaakov. Jacob asked his son Joseph in Bereshit in Genesis chapter 47 verse 30, Unsa'atani mimitzrayim, you should move me, take me out of this land of idol worshipper of Egypt. So he asked him to bury him in Eretz Israel after his passing. So why you need to say mimitzrayim? Obviously he was in Egypt at the time that he is about to pass. So in order to bury him in Hebron, in Israel, he needs to take him from there, the Rosh said. So the Torah come and teach one that the Torah want to tell us that that's what Yaakov asked Yosef. He said, Tol imi, also mimitzrayim tol imi, which means you should take from Egypt some earth of Egypt. So the Chazon Ish in Yoreh De'ah, Reish Chet, 208, said that we derive from that the notion of taking some of the earth together. I remember several members of my shul in Annapolis, Maryland, they asked to get special dirt from Eretz Israel to be buried with them. They said that that's their family minhag. It's based on the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah says that there's a concept of Gilul Mechilot, which means after the person pass, we believe at the time of Mashiach, at the end of the days, so all the deceased will transmit it to Eretz Israel. So there's a concept of you go to a special tunnel. Anyway, v'chama shiur tfusa, What is the amount of dirt you need to take with the deceased? Piresh Rabbi Elazar, some said by Rabbi Tzadok, some said that it's Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat. Anyway, it depends on the Vilna Gaon or the Rosh or the Tosfot. Anyway, נוטל עפר תיכוח וחופר בבתולה 3 אצבעות. So he said that he will dig a loose dirt and dig uncultivated ground to a depth of 3 finger breadth. In case this earth would absorb the blood. Because the Rosh said, it brings the Yerushalmi, that they usually that's the amount that it will dig the blood. מי טבע וכמה שיעור תפוסה, פירש רבי אלעזר ברבי צדוק נוטל את הקיסמים ואת הקססות וזורק את הוודאים ומניח את הספקות והשאר מצטרף לרוב בעניינו של מת. So basically he said that he takes the wood chips and lumps of earth and then he discards with a certainly not the corpse, which is the stones, and he set aside item that is uncertain if they are connected to the corpse, and the rest, which means anything that is apparently from the corpse, combined to earth the amount of the majority of the structure of the corpse. And he said, ולרוב העצמות ולמלוא תרווה עד רקב. And of the quarter cup of bones and the full ledge of dust from the corpse. So that's the shi'ur, that's the measure that you have the tum'at ohel, that the ritual impurity imparted by a 10. So this is a challenge of what Rabbi Eliezer said, because you do not have the request of 3 finger breadth that he mentioned earlier. So the Gemarrah responds and said, who, meaning Rabbi Elazar, the Amar Ke'aitana, the Tanya, v'chama shi'ur tfusa, Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Ben Azai, notel afar tichoach. Again, he said that he needs to take a loose earth, v'chofer bivtula 3 אצבעות, and dig virgin ground to a depth of 3 finger breadth. Then the Mishnah said that one must examine the ground for up to 20 cubits from that spot where the corpse was found. Bodek heimenu 65b. Now Rava deal with graves that relocate from their place before you know that it was a cemetery or graveyard. Amar Rava badak upina. Badak upina. Someone checked a field to see if it's a corpse, and he found and he relocated it. And then is another one. Badak ve'ashkach. And then he found the third one. So it's already relocated, but it was 3. So lo hai mefane lei gabei hanach trei. So he said that you cannot relocate this third corpse, the place that you relocate the former 2 corpses, because you know that it's not a permanent gravesite. Velo haneitrei legabei haichad, and he does not return these 2 alongside with this one either, because he is not obligated to restore the corpses to their prior locations after they have been reburied. Ika de hamri. Another option, Amarava, kivan shenitna reshut lefanot. Since we have a permission to move the first and the second corpses, so therefore mefane lehon. So therefore we move them all, including the third one. So the Gemara said, "Velashvinu shchunat kvarot." So let's make it as a part of a graveyard. Why? Because you have here the 3 corpses that were found buried together. So it might be others in the vicinity. So they said, "Velashvinu shchunat kvarot." So why are you allowed to remove the third dead body? Amar Reish Lakish, Ilah מצאו ותיארו ארץ ישראל. So it was a pretext that they found. So since he had a permission to relocate the first two graves, so the sages allowed to relocate the third one in order to purify the Eretz Israel for the Kohanim and other matter of purification. And therefore they are more lenient. They treated it as temporarily gravesite, because even after you found the third grave, you're not sure that it is a grave site. That's the way the Rosh said it. Since we're not clear that this is a permanent graves, so the truth is you can relocate the whole three. But that's the idea of leniency. So, as we said, if someone found the three burial sites in one location, he needs to dig 20 cubits around the graves in order to make sure that there is no other graves in that location. So if you do not find anything, בדק ב-20 אמה ולא מצא מים, so therefore, can you say now the Rosh said that it's not a permanent area and you can relocate them? אמר רב מנשה בר ימי אמר רב, שכונת קברות. Since you found three graves, it's already some type of graveyard, like some manner of cemetery, and therefore the Rosh explained you cannot relocate them because it's already three. The reason, so now this is in parentheses, but we read it, so again, that's not everyone go by this girsa, but we're now going to the Mishnah. The Mishnah is dealing now with a sfeikot, with uncertainty, with nig'ei tzarat. So nig'ei tzarat is some type of leprosy that appear on the skin. It's like dermatological all kind of sign around the body, and the person who carried those leprosy, he contaminated anybody else who touches him. And the minimum is, we said that location that you have 36 hairs, soon you see 6 in the left and 6 in the right. That's based in the Mishnah in Nedarim, chapter 6. So basically you have the Kohen that check it, and kol safek negaim. Any uncertainty when it comes to a leper's sore, so batchila initially tahor ad shelo nizkak letum'ah. So it's pure until he established that the case of ritual impurity. Mishenizkak lituma, one it has been determined to be a case of impurity, sfeikot tameh. So the uncertainty concerning it is deemed impure. So there's a Mishnah in Nedarim, chapter 5, Mishnah 5. There's two people came before the Kohen, one Greece, one Sela. So anyway, so the details is over there. Menanamile, אמר רב יהודה אמר רב אמר קרא לטהרו לטמאו. הוא לפתח בכתוב בטהרה תחילה. Since they start with the purification in the leper, יחי אפילו משנזקק לטומאה נמי ספקות טהור. So if that's the case, so even once it has been determined to be a case of impurity, uncertainty concerning it should be deemed pure as well. So because we said that that's applied to anything that it's an uncertainty. So the Gemarrah said, אלא כי אידמא דרבי יהודה אמר רבא איתמר, אם בהרת קדמה לשיער לבן טמא, ואם שיער לבן קודם לבהרת טהור. ספק טמא. רבי יהושע אמר כהה, מהי כהה? Rabbi Yeshua said that it's keha. What is the keha? Amar Rabbi Yehuda keha v'tahor. That it's like unsolvable and a rule that it's pure. So it's not because the Rosh said, it's not because it's kehe. It's like a dark. So v'dilma keha v'tameh. So, because otherwise, what disputed in Tanakama, they were said. So he said, אמר רב יהודה, אמר רב, אמר קרא לתארו לתמו, הואיל פתח בה כתוב בתארה תחילה. So since the pasuk, the verse opened with the purity first, we generally, when it's come to uncertainty, we demonstrate that it's pure. Now we're dealing with zavim, people who have the discharge. בשבע דרכים בודקים את הזהב. There's a 7 way that we ground the zav, the one who have discharge, עד שלא נזקק לזיווה, as long as not being conformed, as having this discharge. במאכל ומשתה, eat and drink. במסע, put a heavy load on his back. ובקפיצה, maybe jump, and that would cause him to see it. ובחולי, that he have some diseases. ובמראה, maybe he look at something that, ובהרהור, מי שנזקק לזיווה אין בודקין אותו. Why? Because in the third time, אונסו וספקו ושכבת זרות טמאים שרגליים לדבר. So because you have basically the foundation, the basis that we anticipate in that manner after the Riyah Shniyah. Because the moment you have that status of Zav, so you assume that the subsequent discharges is also Zav. So the continuation of the Mishnah is basically, we see it in the Sanhedrin, page 78. So if someone hit his fellow, so they for sure we need to have all the evaluation, but basically Gemarrah Sanhedrin said that Amaket Chavero, 78, Amaket Chavero, if someone strike another with heavy blows, V'amadu lemita, and the doctors assume that he will die as a result of this beating, Vehekel mima shaya, but the health improved from what it was, so that they then determined that you will not die from these injuries. We have now someone in Arnov, they just buried Motzi Shabbos, this Rav Rotman, the guy came to that shul in Arnov, start shooting and hitting people, and this guy, they thought he will be okay, and a year later he passed. Anyway, so they have it. So now they change. Rashi in Sanhedrin 78 said that now they assume that he will survive. But unfortunately, things turned around and worsened, and he passed away. So the one who struck him is liable, chayav. It's the same as a murderer. Rabbi Nechemia patur she'raglayim l'davar. Nechemia said that it's exempt because there is a basis for anticipating that manner, which since the victim began to recover during his illness, it's reasonable to assume that his death was caused by a factor other than the assault. So that's the way that Tosfot and Rivan say. So what do we see in the Mishnah? We differentiate between the second and the third Riyat Azav. מנענו מלא אמר רבי נתן אמר קרא ועזב את זובו לראייה שלישית התקש לנקבה. והתניא רבי אליעזר אומר, הוא היה בשלישית בודקים אותו, ברביעית אין בודקים אותו. So basically, Rabbi Eliezer said that you check it in the third time. If you are honest, you need to bring an offering, and by the fourth, you don't do it. אלא בעתים כמפלגי. Rabbi Eliezer and the sages disputed how you derive the word et. Rabbi Eliezer דרש עתים, et zovo. That's another additional one. ורבנן and the sages לא דרשי עתים, do not expound instances of the word et. So in their view, this verse alludes to only 2 discharges.